It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
WESN.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 6861662 and start building your future.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan, and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I am Takia Thompson, your host for our Talk It Out Tuesday show. The Ministry of Homeland Security has announced plans to add 2,316 police officers over the next 5 years through a phased recruitment program aimed at strengthening frontline policing and improving public safety. However, this initiative has drawn public and expert criticism. Let's address this in our Ask the Expert segment. While many have welcomed the initiative, others argue that simply increasing the number of officers may not be enough to significantly reduce crime and criminal activity across the country. This morning, we speak with former Police Commissioner Gary Griffiths on whether more officers will truly translate into safer communities and what other measures may be necessary to effectively combat crime. Good morning, Mr. Griffiths.
Good morning.
So what is your overall reaction to the government's plan to recruit 2,316 police officers over the next 5 years?
They're just on a fishing expedition. The persons who have the authority to direct the government will be that of the Commissioner of Police and the Minister of Homeland Security, and not targeting them. But remember, these two individuals never led more than 10 or 12 persons in the vast majority of their policing career. Roger Alexander was, most of the time, he was an inspector. He was in command of about 10 persons. Same with Guerrero. So they have absolutely no knowledge whatsoever about leadership capabilities, accountability, measurement of performance. And you know, the sad thing about it is this country, we are so politically biased. when you say many persons support this, many persons support it because they support the government. If the government says that the police service must wear pink tuxedos, they will say, yes, sounds like a good plan. You can't be a blind loyalist. You have to have knowledge. And sometimes I will ask the public, do a little bit of research. Trinidad and Tobago, we have, in relation to population density, we have probably one of the highest amount in police officers in the world. And now we are going to increase it. How is it that Roger Alexander and Guerrero how did they come up with extra 2,318? Why not 200? Why not 500? Why not 20,000? Why not 1 million? You just come up with a number. What research did you do to state that this is what is required? Additionally, the UK experts, when I was Commissioner of Police and Minister, they came to Trinidad and Tobago, they did the relevant research, and they said that there's absolutely no need whatsoever to increase the police service. In fact, it could even be reduced. Dwayne Gibbs said the same thing. But that is when it is you have experts, international experts, who have the ability to do proper research. We do not need to increase our quantity. We need to enhance our quality. And what is required for a good police service is to have the capability of properly trained police officers. Our training is very limited. And even in the systems and how it is we be able to ascertain who is a police officer, make sure that they remain in line, in track, that is not being done. So you're moving from 7,000 to 10,000 police officers, you're still not providing body cameras, you're not providing polygraph testing, you're not doing drug testing, you're not having proper systems to measure their performance and make them accountable. That is what happened. That's what the country would have seen in 2020, when everywhere you turn, you were seeing a police vehicle, you were seeing a patrol vehicle, you were seeing blue lights, you were getting a 5-minute response to distress calls. Criminals were being pegged back. There was a deterrent. The product of opportunity was no longer there. So how is it that we had more than enough police officers just a few years ago and now we don't? It is because of bad management. It is because of bad leadership. Additionally, when it is you speak about this, you have to look at how it is going to cost the state. I listened to the Welfare Association president, and he supported it. He will support anything that the police commissioner says. This was the same man who foolishly said that he agreed with the commissioner when police officers riddle a car like a strainer while persons had their hands in the air. And this Welfare Association president was dumb enough to say, I see no reason for any action to be taken on these police officers, where international best practice means immediately those officers should be removed from operational duty. So for him to say he supports it, that is typical of those type of persons who will agree to everything that the commissioner says. And it does not help because, as I said, when it is, we are now going to have to be burdened with over $500 million plus per annum for extra salaries. Let me tell you that if it is that the government decides to really want to fix this country, but there's absolutely no one in the government with any proper training, qualification, knowledge, or experience at a high degree in law enforcement and policing. Because as I said, Roger Alexander and Guerrero were inspectors and superintendents, middle management. They have no knowledge of international best practice, operational systems to measure performance, make them accountable. So we are now going to pump $500 million in more salaries. That $500 million, if a government truly wants to fix this country, imagine that $500 being used to improve the technology, the equipment, the training, the assets, the units, to lift us up with 21st century law enforcement training and so forth. That will provide all of the equipment, the training, the technology needed for the police service, the customs, the immigration, the Coast Guard, the Army, the fire service, the prison service, with all the different immigration, everything that they want in technology that is required. In this era of technology, you're actually seeing less persons being required because of the technology. So when you have technology in the police service, for example, you can actually have with body cameras, and also with CCTV footage, with Safe City model, with GPS tracking on police vehicles to make sure they stay in their area of responsibility. All of that can now minimize the requirement for police numbers. That is why if you do research, you will see that there's been a reduction of police officers in developed countries because they are using technology. We are doing just the opposite. We have a commissioner of police who has refused. For 5 years, they have refused to implement one body camera and remove the 1,200 I established. They refuse to utilize the body dashboard cameras on the police vehicles. They refuse to utilize the GPS tracking on police vehicles to make sure they stay in the area of responsibility. They refuse to operationalize and to repair the 17,000 cameras throughout the country to have us as a safe city model. When you refuse to utilize technology, you will then have the excuse to go back to say we want more police officers. And let me finally add, what the Dwayne Gibbs system is the same thing that I was doing. What we have now, you go in a police station, you're seeing 10 police officers sitting down waiting for people to report a crime. That is what I changed. That is what Dwayne Gibbs changed. We had online reporting. You don't need to go to a station. A police station should not be an avenue to just have police officers wait for you to report a crime. You can report a crime online. They removed the online reporting. They removed the police app. We had more police officers out in the street. So instead of 12 police officers twiddling their thumbs in a station, 10 of them go out onto the street. You go on foot patrol, you go on vehicle patrol, you put that heavy visibility, and you have a few police officers in a station to man the station. They have now gone back to many police officers sitting down in a station waiting for people to report a crime. That is not how you fix the police service. That is not how you reduce crime. That is not how you improve law enforcement.
And along those lines of the crime, citizens argue that, crime is more deeply rooted in Trinidad and Tobago, and the numbers won't, it can't solve it alone by just increasing the numbers. You started touching on it, but just to elaborate some more, do you share those views as well and agree?
Well, it's there. It's yet to be seen. As I said, Trinidad and Tobago, in relation to population density, we have one of the highest police departments in the world. New York City has 35,000 police officers to secure just about 8.5 million persons daily. We have 1/3 of that to secure 1.5 million, and you can do the ratio throughout other countries. So it is not. It is, as I said, you keep pumping more numbers, and if it is you don't have proper systems to measure the performance of the police officers and make them accountable, you are now going to open the avenue, open that Pandora's box for more rogue police officers to get into the system. When it is we were doing proper research, as again, with that GPS tracking on every police vehicle, that ensured every police vehicle stayed in the area of responsibility. That ensured a less than 5-minute response to distress calls. So if everything was being done, what was the need for more police officers? In fact, I was looking at the concept of even reducing the number of police officers, but giving us more funding and using those funds to improve the technology that is required. You pump technology. Roger Alexander, I think he still uses Betamax. I think Rivera still uses 8-track. They are not into the 21st century policing. That is why, as I said, they don't use body cameras, they don't use GPS on police vehicles, they don't have a proper operational command center, they don't have a 5-minute response to distress calls, they remove the online reporting, they do not want to use technology, they want to go back to, let's just have more police officers. That is as backward as you can get. But the reason being, and the sad thing about it is the people who will criticize me, when you look at the comments on social media, they can't debate with me. So what they will turn to is sour grapes. What about Stuart Young's stepdaughter? Why do I shut your mouth? I mean, I have an 8-year-old nephew, that is more intelligent than some adults on social media. They cannot debate, they cannot criticize, they cannot condemn, but because they are blind political loyalists, they feel that this is the right thing. Nobody is more loyal to me as it pertains to patriotism. I will do everything to support this government because they are the persons in authority. And I am giving advice to this government. It is the wrong avenue. You are taking advice from two less than middle management persons who are not qualified, experienced, or trained in law enforcement from a high level. And it is because we have a very poor standard in how these people are selected. In the Ministry of Homeland Security, there are 20,000 persons, inclusive of uniformed officers and civilians. Every 19,999 must have minimum qualification. The only person that does not have minimum qualification or required is the Minister of Homeland Security. The same thing with when you have a commissioner of police who couldn't come in the probably top 20 for promotion from superintendent to senior sup, but then becomes the commissioner of police. People will be shocked, but this is because of our bad system based on the last administration putting a system in place to allow a police service commission to select a commissioner of police. And the police service commission has nobody, again, qualified at a law enforcement at a high level. So when you put middle management people to make decisions, the government, you can't blame the government. They're going to listen to what they say. If Roger Alexander and Guevara, as I said, say we wanted 20,000 police officers, they will do that. If they say 50,000, they will do that. And that is where decisions are being made without persons with expertise to guide the government accordingly.
Yeah. And now, in your opinion, what areas of policing, currently, or, need most of the attention in terms of, that strengthening visibility, intelligence gathering, and investigations, or even community policing, which, in your opinion?
Yeah, good question. So what happened when I took over as Commissioner of Police, we had units that were about 40 years old that were totally outdated. It made no sense. And that's what we did. We transformed the police service. We re-established different units that were required, such as social media monitoring unit, gender-based violence unit, a select special operation response team similar to what you will see in SWAT and television shows and so forth. So we had to put in specific type of units that were required for 21st century policing, whilst removing dozens of units that were totally outdated. We had, as it pertained to white-collar crime, for example, we had the cybercrime unit, we had the fraud unit, we had the ACIB, we had the, there's another, so there were 4 different units, and the FIB. These 4 units all had to do with white-collar crime. One hand didn't know what the other was doing. So at times there would be an investigation, and 3 or 4 out of the 4 units were investigating the same thing. We amalgamated it to make a white-collar crime unit. That is the type of transformation you need in the police service. But again, when you have a middle management guy who spent 26 to 27 years in special branch behind a desk, not understanding community policing, operational systems such as the Special Operation Response Team, the importance of a police marine branch, a social media monitoring unit, a gender-based violence unit. These units that I am calling, no one in Trinidad and Tobago could know, but I have known about those units for the last 4 years. Yeah, because Gary Griffith implemented it, so let's shut it down because we just want to be petty. And then you reignited units that are totally irrelevant. So when we transformed the police service, we realized we had more than enough police officers. And I did the same as Minister of National Security when we had the Community Comfort Patrol, we did community policing, we had the Highway Patrol, we had the Rapid Response Unit. What that meant is that everywhere you turn, you were seeing blue lights. My biggest criticism I got as Minister of National Security was that people were seeing too many blue lights and hearing too many sirens. Everywhere you turned, I put that same model similar to New York City, where it allowed people to feel safe, feel comfortable, to know that I could call 999 and for 45 minutes I will not be on hold or be told I have to call a station. A police station is not the avenue for a response. So when citizens feel that there's a crime, I have to call the police station nearest to me. That is backward policing. A police station is an administrative department. What you have is the Highway Patrol, the Rapid Response Unit, the Emergency Response Patrol, SORT. So if a gender-based violence unit, I change the police service to a delivery service. You call 999, they come to you. Now we are going back to the old-time system of you have to go to a station to report yourself being raped, someone is kidnapped, someone is beaten by their husband. That is not policing. That is stupidity. But we have gone back to all of this because, again, we have persons who are not highly qualified, and they are giving the government very bad advice, and it is going to not just cost the taxpayers 500 million per annum, but it is going to probably affect the image of the police service by bringing in the elements that we do not want. So again, as I said, what is required is to put systems to measure performance, make police officers accountable. Not for 5 years since I left, you do not want to implement one body camera. You refuse to use the tasers. You refuse to use the pepper spray. You take away the GPS tracking on the 100+ police vehicles. You remove the Rapid Response Unit. You remove the Emergency Response Patrol, the online reporting, the gender-based violence unit, the social media monitoring unit, the police marine branch. All of this was provided with the same 7,000 police officers. So there was no need for it. We were in a period during COVID when police officers were on full alert, and not one police officer was absent from duty. 30 lost their lives, and people saw that heavy visible presence. People knew that I called 999. In less than 5 minutes, I could get a response to my distress call. That is what put an end to kidnapping. Kidnapping came to an end because of this technology. Extortion came to an end. Home invasion came to an end. All of these things have returned because of bad systems of policing. So if it is you put the proper systems, there's no need to increase the numbers of police officers.
Mm-hmm. And along those lines, do you believe the TTPS currently has the resources and the infrastructure to effectively accommodate the training for this specific number of officers?
We don't even have the finance to support the present police service. As Commissioner of Police, for the first 6 months of every fiscal year, the Minister of Finance, as clueless as he was in understanding finance, I did not get a cent. So imagine trying to run an organization with 7,000 persons, 1,700 police vehicles, 120 police stations without a cent. So you're talking about electricity, air conditioning, meals for prisoners, fuel for vehicles, maintenance of vehicles, uniform, equipment, training, all of that without a cent. All that we were getting was to pay salaries. So the police service as it is crippled because of bad governance and the lack of allocation of resources. You're going to now increase it by 30%. That is the height of stupidity. You can't get it right in the present system to maintain the police service. That is why when I formed the I Support Our Service, was trying to get the private sector to assist the police, because we had police stations, they couldn't get toners, they couldn't get, they didn't have paper, they didn't have a generator that was working, there was fungus and mold all over the buildings, the vehicles could not be even moved all around the station. It was like an avenue just to put derelict vehicles, and there was no one there to even try to get it removed. The police, we had police officers. There was a police officer on a motorbike. He had the same jacket that I provided for them 6 years ago, and they have never been able to get new jackets. Bulletproof vests, you have bulletproof vests that are expired. You have police officers not being given the capability to train on a range, and because of that you have negligent discharges. You have police officers not having the proper capability to understand minimum use of force, of providing every police officer with a body camera, with a taser, with pepper spray that is causing many persons to be killed if somebody has a cutlass, because the police is left with nothing else other than to use a weapon. That is the type of madness going on right now because of the inability to provide the police service with the resources, the tools, the technology, the training, the equipment, the assets that they need. That is what is required. You provide that first, and you then you can start thinking, well, maybe do we need to improve the numbers? The numbers is just going to cause a greater burden to the police service in trying to maintain it, because now you're going to spend $500 million plus per annum just in salaries for these officers, and not providing the type of, because we didn't start talking about training, equipment, technology, tools, and so forth for these extra 2,300 plus officers. So if you can't get it right now with the present 7,000, you feel you're going to get it right by adding numbers, because the added numbers mean it's going to be added administrative, logistic, and financial burden on the state and on the police service itself, where they can't get what is required in the first place.
So you mentioned that it's going to be an added burden to the force itself, but many communities, they complain about that slow police response when it comes to reaching out and not having police come to them in a timely manner. Now, will more officers realistically improve these issues?
No, not at all. And again, I go right back to 2020. The Police Service Commission did the recording of the 999 system, and the almost 95% of distress calls, you got a response in less than 5 minutes. You can't get better than that. That is faster than most developed countries in the world. Less than 5 minutes. But now you've gone back to, you dial 999 and you're waiting for 45 minutes. Providing more police officers is not going to improve that. You're telling people if you have a problem, you need to call the police station. And the police station would not have the vehicle. Putting more officers is not going to improve that. You're not going to have a system where police officers have vehicles and they stay in their area of responsibility because you remove the GPS. So 4 police vehicles will be parked up by their girlfriend or going to pick up somebody or stay in a station. So you're not going to get a faster response because of that. What we did was transform the police service to make sure that the 999 system was so fully equipped with just 12 officers 24 hours a day. Anytime you call 999, immediately a call you will answer. You answer the call. We had a screen in the operational command center. We see where the call is, and then we had 100 police vehicles locked in throughout the country, 10 in each of the 10 divisions. Think about it. Think of if you live in Digo Martin. So you have 3 vehicles just patrolling Digo Martin, 3 in Pity Valley, 3 in Cocorite, and 3 in Carenage and 1 in Cocorite. That means that anytime there was a 999 call, one of these 10 vehicles could respond in less than 5 minutes. And so that is what was happening, and the people knew that. So you got that response, you got that emergency response in less than 5 minutes. You saw the visibility, and that is what is required. If you go back to, let me find a station, somebody broke into my home, and call the station, and the station tells you they have no police vehicles. How is it that improving the numbers of police officers going to assist you in a faster response? We were able to do it with 7,500 a few years ago in a less than 5-minute response by increasing the number of police officers. How is that going to assist? The police are going to run faster. A police officer will put another officer on top of his back and say, well, now we have more numbers. Let's get to your home at a faster rate. It is total stupidity. It shows lack of understanding, and it shows the importance of us having qualified people, trained and experienced at a high level in international best practice when you are appointed as a security minister or a police commissioner.
Now, you mentioned a bit of this before, but just to expand, are there international examples Trinidad and Tobago can learn from when it comes to that crime reduction strategy implementation?
Yeah, it's a principle of a LAMP model, which I have used. It's proper leadership, accountability, good management, and measurement of performance. Mayor Rudy Giuliani and the then Commissioner of Police, Bernard Carrick, that is what they did. And New York City was transformed. It became one of the safest cities in the United States. But it didn't stop there. They had to do a transformation of the image of the police service by changing the image of the officers. Because even though crime went down, they were still known as pigs. But however, within 3 years, they were known as America's finest. Nothing has changed. And that is what it is that we can look at those aspects. When it is I twinned the NYPD with Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, that's how I was able to implement the social media monitoring unit. That social media monitoring unit was able to utilize technology to go into the dark web and to be able to have what is known as predictive policing, prevent the crime from happening, not wait for a crime and then let's go and see if we could increase the detection rate. That is you doing it after the fact. Likewise with the gender-based violence unit. It is unbelievable that we have gone right back to a point where women are beaten, women are raped, and you're telling them they have to come to a station to make a report. That is disgusting. Shame on you in the hierarchy of the police service to have removed a gender-based violence unit where we had specially trained and qualified persons to be able to understand the confidentiality and the sensitivity of such crime, so that you will call and we will come to your home. We will be able to speak to you, and it will be done in a very confidential manner. And now you had a unit that will target the perpetrators. Now we've gone back to a woman being beaten by her husband. She goes to a station, and you can't get all police officers that will be good role models. He will say, well, why does you reach home 2 o'clock in the morning? And that is the kind of stupidity we have gone back to. So women who are beaten, women who are raped might be reluctant to now come forward because now they have to go to a station. They might be treated as a criminal rather than a victim because of the person who may not be trained properly. We implemented a marine branch because I understood the importance of police having that type of marine branch, having a special operation response team to make sure that the intelligence only goes to that unit rather than to the police service, because I discovered that many kidnappings, rogue police officers were involved in it. That is why 12 consecutive kidnappings, we were able to kick down the door, pinpoint the perpetrators, arrest the criminal, and rescue the victim. That never happened before. From the Natalie Polney go up, now we've gone back to kidnapping. Home invasion stop, because as soon as you jump the wall, we can't stop. But by the time you jump over, we'll be able to target you and neutralize you. Those are the things that we took international best practice from, and they've removed all of that. I knew the importance of body cameras. I acquired 1,200 body cameras, looking at international best practice, making sure the body cameras can have an immediate link and a feed back to an operational command center. You shut it down, and then you have a commissioner of police lying to the country to say that these cameras were not good cameras. You type Axon and GTEC. These are the same body cameras used by most of the police departments in North America. So they deliberately refuse to utilize the technology but because, as I said, Guevara has never gone further north of Shaka Shakari. He has not been able to understand the international best practice, the technology, the systems for policing. And because of that, and similar to Roger Alexander, and because of that, our police service these are the same police officers, mind you, that when people criticize this police service, the vast majority of the same officers that had public trust and confidence at 60% just a few years ago. Why is it less than 8%? These are the same police officers. The difference is poor management and poor leadership. And finally, the poor selection process. Instead of trying to pump technology, assets, equipment, and training in what you already have to improve the standard, you come up with a 2-point crime plan to reduce crime, state of emergency, and more police officers. Totally unacceptable.
Now, Mr. Griffith, if the recruitment is implemented properly, do you believe that they can have a positive impact, and what can that positive impact look like in the next 5 years?
It's not next 5 years, it could happen in 2 months. I did it in 2020. 2020 was the highest reduction it was the lowest number of murders in any given year in 20 years. So when this commissioner, minister, and other people mislead the country to say it was the highest number, the highest reduction in murders last year. August 2020 to August 2021, there were less than 350 murders, and that was without a state of emergency that gave the police authorization to lock up anybody if you believe that they might commit a crime. So it was done. Public trust and confidence was 60%. Public trust in the commissioner at the time was nearly 80%. The country felt safe. You were seeing high visibility. You were getting a rapid response. People trusted the police service. We were utilizing systems that anywhere you turn, you were seeing a police vehicle. There was heavy training in public service, public relations, customer service training, where police officers will no longer be seen as obnoxious and high-handed and arrogant. And they were forced to speak in a manner becoming of them understanding that you're a servant to the citizens of this country. Now, because of the few officers who know that I could hoof you, I could shout at you, I could scream at you, I could curse you, I could lock you up if I want, and just say because of the outdated colonial laws we have, where it is that if it is that you argue with a police officer, you could be arrested. We have gone back to that type of policing. No fault of the officers, because there are no systems to measure their performance and make them accountable. So what you speak about, it happened. But when you have a commissioner of police that will be able to, as I said, shut down the gender-based violence unit, rapid response unit, emergency response patrol, community comfort patrol, social media monitoring unit, online reporting, GPS tracking on vehicles, dashboard cameras on vehicles, the technology that we had to put an end to kidnapping, home invasion, extortion, a special operation response team shutdown that was instrumental in pegging back criminals and putting an end to kidnapping. When it is you have commissioners that do all of this, shut down everything, and then mislead the country to say, well, the body cameras were too expensive. When I purchased the body cameras at $3,000 each, when earlier Christopher was getting body cameras at $8,000 each. And then yes, you don't like what I have, but for 5 years you can't purchase one body camera. The country must start to understand it is because of ignorance and not understanding international best practice. So all that is required is to reignite, reboot the items that were there, and it can cause a total transformation in the image of the police service, whilst also doing exactly what was required, the highest reduction in violent crime in over 30 years.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Griffith, for coming on this morning and sharing your views on this topic. It is something that is ongoing, so as we continue to follow along, we hope we can see some changes based on what is being said from the TTPS and also what the public is saying moving forward. So thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Guys, we are about to take a short break, and when we come back, we have another engaging conversation, so stay with us.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Welcome back. Continuing with our Ask the Expert segment, the Ministry of Labour has issued a reminder to supermarket operators and private business across Trinidad and Tobago that workers' rights are protected under the country's labour laws. The warning comes following allegations of breaches involving minimum wage payments, overtime, leave entitlements, and other workplace protections in parts of the private sector. Trade unions say while many businesses comply with the law, there are still workers being taken advantage of through underpayment, long hours, and poor working conditions. Today, Labour Specialist and Joint Trade Union Movement Assistant General Secretary, Mr. Trevor Johnson, joins us to examine the importance of labour protections, the role unions play, and why employers are being reminded that workers' rights are not optional. Good morning, Mr. Johnson.
Good morning to you and good morning to all viewers of WESN.
Now, Mr. Johnson, from a trade union perspective, how widespread are labor laws violation in Trinidad and Tobago's business sector?
Okay, well, I think it's appropriate to look at this from a broader perspective, because I think there might be sometimes a misconception in Trinidad and Tobago that labor laws may only be applicable to businesses or organizations where there may be a trade union or some sort of worker representation. But labor laws are actually applicable in most cases across the board, even in a non-unionized business or organization. And I think sometimes that's where part of the challenge might begin, that sometimes some business owners may have the perception that certain labor laws are not applicable to them. So we do see from time to time widespread breaches in terms of the labor laws, very common, especially where we're dealing with like minimum wage type environments, the issue of the longer working hours without overtime, the issue of perhaps NIS deductions either not being made or being deducted but not being remitted to the National Insurance Board. And this has serious implications for the workers when they do wish to make a claim or to make whatever claims they wish to make on the national insurance. So you have things like that, payment of overtime rates. You may have sometimes even safety and health issues in the workplace that needs to be addressed, which are often overlooked, and this can have serious implications. Every so often you hear of a issue of a serious injury or unfortunately even a death in a workplace as a result of some occupational safety and health issue. So these are just some of the common breaches or violations, one might say. And even in terms of maybe an employer may want to engage in some form of disciplinary action, and it's ideal that they follow the laws, the labor laws, in terms of how they attempt to execute that, so they don't end up before a third party. Or of course the worker would have their right if they choose to engage the services of a union, a trade union, to represent them. Yeah. So these are common aspects that we see in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of how labor laws are viewed, and it's important that they are applied across the board. Even in a non-unionized institution, labor laws are still applicable. Like maternity leave, for example, it doesn't matter whether the institution is unionized or not. You have to apply the provisions of the Maternity Protection Act. So I just raised those as more so common examples that you might find in terms of what might be occurring in some workplaces. I'm not saying all, because there are organizations and employers that seek to comply, but there are also those where we see breaches, either through maybe genuine unawareness or ignorance, or maybe a blatant violation of the provisions of the labor laws that do exist at present.
So in knowing, legal rights, why is it important for workers to understand that in the workplace?
Well, first of all, I think it is important because workers need to know, they need to know both what their rights are as well as their responsibilities. And again, it's important. What you tend to find happening is that in a lot of workplaces, workers are hired and just put onto into the work line, whatever it might be, without any sort of onboarding or orientation. And it is important that workers know what their terms and conditions are, either by the provision of an employment letter, or they may also be provided with, a policy document or guidelines that the organization may present to them. And it's also important that they understand basic understanding. No one, of course, expects them to know all the labor laws, etc. But they can get guidance. The Ministry of Labor does do a fairly good job. They have officers there that can guide workers if they have a particular query. You can either contact the ministry or you can go in and seek to get guidance. And of course, in today's world, you have the online access to many sites that would give you both the labor laws, and also, of course, you can get onto the ministry's website, which would give you an outline in terms of some of your basic rights. And the ministry's website, as I see it, is applicable to both employers and workers, so that both parties can be guided with respect to their rights and their responsibilities in the workplace.
Yeah. Now, some employees, they fear victimization or losing their job if they speak up. How common is that concern?
Well, it is, well, there's always sometimes that you find that a fear, especially in what might be termed where there's no union in the workplace. There's the perception, or sometimes the reality, it might be that workers in such workplaces, and depending on the posture or the attitude of management, how it comes across, it can create that type of atmosphere where workers feel that if they speak out, or if they seek to ensure that they get their rights, their appropriate pay rates, etc., that it can lead to jeopardizing their employment. But again, the labor laws do speak to that, and workers they can seek the guidance, or workers are free to join a union, even though that union may not have recognized majority status at that workplace. But workers can join a union and get the benefit of guidance from the union. They don't have to wait till something untoward or negative happens. It's it's almost like sometimes a union membership might be defined as being there to offer you guidance and protection, not just when you get in trouble, but even along the way, and helps to guide you as well in terms of your rights, but also what you're required to do, and understanding your terms and conditions in the workplace. So an informed worker, a conscious worker, a worker who is well aware, and we have seen it often, even in non-unionized environments, they can operate much more successfully because the employer themselves become aware that this worker is conscious, they know what their rights are, and they also know what their responsibilities are. And that will negate the issue of this issue of fear of being either victimized or your employment being jeopardized. So there, it's not like no way out kind of scenario. Workers can inform themselves and be conscious, and therefore be able to ensure that they know what their rights are in the workplace.
Now, you mentioned joining a union. Would that fall in line with the protections that may exist for workers who report labor violations or unfair treatment? And can you tell us a bit more on those?
Okay, I didn't quite get the first part of your question. I know you said you mentioned union. Could you repeat?
Yes.
Sorry.
So you mentioned, joining the unions. I was asking along the lines of what protections exist for workers who report labor violations and or unfair treatment.
Okay, well, first of all, workers who, whether it's through a union or they can go directly to the Ministry of Labor. So sometimes workers may not be aware that as a worker in Trinidad and Tobago, if you are not a member of a union, or you have a particular issue, or you just need guidance, you can walk into the Ministry of Labor and seek to see, or contact them for an appointment, I imagine, and seek to get some guidance on a particular issue, just like you would with any other thing. You need to, you're not feeling well, you need to see a doctor, you walk into the, a health center. So you can do that. You can get into the Ministry of Labor and get the appropriate guidance that you need. If there's a particular issue, the Ministry of Labor have a department, an Health Labor Inspectorate department. They have labor officers who can go out to a particular establishment to investigate complaints and ensure that there is compliance. So there's an element of compliance by the Ministry of Labor in monitoring and seeking to ensure that workplaces adhere to the labor laws and regulations. And if a worker feels that it is in breach, they can report it to the Ministry of Labor, or they can get the assistance of a trade union in terms of following up on the matter for them. Right? So I think the key is, as I said, being conscious, being aware, and the worker is there to to work, to a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, and the key is fair. It's fair all around. You want to give the employer or the business a fair day's work, but you also expect to get fair terms and conditions, and you want to have those adhered to. And that's a reasonable expectation, that I give you my labor, and in turn, whatever the laws or the regulations permit, then I simply expect that you would conform to that.
Mm-hmm. And do you believe penalties for labor law breaches are strong enough to deter employers from exploiting their workers?
Well, at present, the fines or the consequences for breaches, I think the labor movement has been advocating for decades that first of all, the first issue is that we are operating in Trinidad and Tobago with a fairly dated, or what some might say outdated or archaic set of labor laws. Most of the labor laws in Trinidad and Tobago are over 50 years old. In short, we are older than we have been an independent nation, and therefore clearly, so a lot of the labor laws that exist on the books at present date back to pre-independence. The Trade Unions Act, if I can just call one, that unions are guided by in terms of how unions function and operate, is Act number 20 of 1932. I think that means it's 93 years old. That's older than you and I, on even maybe our combined ages, if that is known. So that we expect, and the current government administration has given a commitment that it will seek to update labor laws. We have seen one such piece of legislation come before Parliament recently, which is the Retrenchment and Severance Benefits Act. It was introduced in the upper house. It still has to be, I think it still has to go before the lower house of Parliament. But as part of its workers' agenda, the government did indicate that it want it and have taken the recommendations of the labor movement that labor legislation as exists at present needs to be updated, and we are hopeful that that would be done. So I say all that to indicate, obviously it means that the fines and the penalties that are prescribed in the pieces of legislation now are absolutely outdated, and therefore Labour would expect that once these pieces of legislation are updated, then the relevant fines and that are applicable will be adjusted to more realistic levels, and therefore it would form a greater sort of level of encouraging employers to comply. It would indicate or bring forward that level of compliance that is required for the labor laws that are currently applicable.
And where young workers and part-time employees come into play, how vulnerable are they in terms of working in that retail or supermarket sector?
Well, in terms of that, what we are seeing today, there's always, the challenge. Young workers, of course, coming into the workplace today. Well, first of all, employment opportunities are very challenging these days for a young worker. Very often they come into an environment where they are being offered maybe some sort of temporary arrangement, short-term contract, part-time arrangement. So just to begin with, the opportunities that might have been available, 20, 30 years ago in terms of permanent, guaranteed employment it's not impossible, but it's not as easily accessed in the times that we are in, and therefore young workers do find it a bit challenging, but it's not impossible for them to come into the workplace, have that, that level of awareness, because we are dealing with young workers who are also very tech conscious.
Yes.
They are online, they check things out, they are aware. So ironically, sometimes, whilst you think that they are young and disadvantaged, many of them, quite frankly, are very quick to look up what their rights are, etc. And they can seek out whatever guidance is needed as a result of at least knowing what their rights are. But we do know that there are establishments where the young workers are challenged or maybe taken advantage of. And the encouragement today, Labour has worked with consultations with the government to ensure that all labor legislation recommendations have been made, including at the tripartite level, meaning employers have also put forward their recommendations. And we are hopeful that the government would keep its commitment to ensure that all labor legislation is updated and therefore provide some level of realistic protection, not to young workers, to female workers, to whether they be part-time, full-time, whatever category. We are hoping that we see some significant improvement in terms of the adherence to labor legislation and workers' rights and protection in the workplace.
Some employees, they argue that the economic pressures make compliance difficult. How do you respond to that?
Employers, I think if you said employers may be arguing that the economic situation
pressures make
makes
compliance difficult. Yeah.
Well, I think Labour doesn't necessarily accept that position put forward. What we do know is that just as workers can get assistance, employers, if you're starting a business or you're in a business, you can, in fact, first of all, you have to be guided to comply with the labor laws as they exist in the workplace. So the first thing an employer needs to do is to ensure that they are in compliance by terms of getting informed. And you have several employer organizations out there that are basically calibrated to help employers comply with the appropriate pieces of legislation. So that I think it's important that if you start from the genesis of your business in terms of ensuring that your business is compliant, notwithstanding the economic situations, because then of course you can do your financial planning to ensure that that you can meet the requirements, whether it's a minimum wage, if you're going to employ X number of workers, you know what the minimum wage is, etc. If you want workers to work overtime, you know what the overtime rates are, etc. If there's a provision for maternity benefits, if a worker requires it, a female worker, then you know also what that provision is. So I think it's very important for employers from the start to, once you start on the premise of a compliance, then or in terms of planning, business planning, then it should negate some of those issues that you might hear about the economic circumstances. It's not to dismiss that there are challenges. We all are facing economic challenges. So it's across the board, by the way. Workers are facing economic challenges. We have workers in some parts of the public sector that are still working on 2013 salaries, and we in 2026. So those workers are clearly facing economic challenges. So labor is not unaware of the economic challenges, because some of our own members and workers that we are aware of in certain industries do face that challenge, and therefore it's something that we have to work together to mitigate, rather than not comply with what is required.
Yeah. And now, what messages would you send to businesses regarding fair treatment and just ensuring that their employees are up to date?
Well, first of all, there are most of the labor the committees under, for example, the Ministry of Labor, like the Minimum Wages Board, which deals with the Minimum Wages Act. You have the ILO 144 committee. You have the Industrial Relations Advisory Committee. The Productivity Council, etc. All of these various committees and tripartite committees. By that I mean that they are comprised, or the composition would be government representatives, employer representatives, and labor representatives. So I think it's and all of these parties meet together in what is called a tripartite setting, so that the Minimum Wages Act, for example, is not just a feature that was put out by the Ministry of Labor by itself, or by trade unions making recommendations. Business or employers also form part of that. I say all that to say that there's a significant opportunity for collaboration between all the parties and all the stakeholders, so that when you come up with a final piece of, say, for example, labor legislation, it has the input of all parties, and all parties, therefore, all stakeholders are aware and can therefore ensure that whatever is the final document or outcome is something that we can all live with, because all parties would have had input into it. It is not something that is just being promulgated and businesses find that they have had no input into it. So the key is to participate in the tripartite process through your various agencies like the Employers Consultative Association, the various business chambers who then input into the tripartite process, and therefore all parties would be aware and seized of what is applicable, and therefore that should negate the issue that we find of workers in the workplace or employers not complying with the various pieces of labor legislation or regulations that may govern the workplace.
Yeah, and finally, what message would you give to workers who may feel powerless or afraid that their voice is not being heard in the workplace?
Well, to those workers, first of all, we would always advocate and articulate that labor is there. You have labor. By labor, I mean the labor movement has always advocated, even for the what we call, we use the term the working class. That means that we are not just advocating for workers who are members of trade unions. The trade union movement advocates and looks after the interests of the working class. So when we deal with, for example, minimum wage regulation, for example, we don't just deal with it for it's to cover all workers, or the Maternity Protection Act or the Occupational Safety and Health Act. So workers out there can rest assured that the labor movement is working in the interests of not just our members who are dues-paying members of the organization, but we have a wider responsibility, and therefore no union would really refuse to be of guidance to a worker in terms of letting them know what their rights are in the workplace, what their responsibilities are, etc. So I think the key is, as I would have mentioned earlier, workers, regardless of whether they're in a unionized or a non-unionized environment, being conscious, being aware, being willing to there's the Ministry of Labor. If you want to just go in to inquire, they have a website you can have access to it. So there are a number of resources available to workers in the workplace today, even migrant workers, if I may so add, that they can avail themselves of and be informed and be not afraid to make an approach where you need you need guidance or you need help. Do not just wait until you get in trouble. If or until something negative occurs, you can get the appropriate guidance to guide you. Or if it is you have been faced with a negative situation, even including dismissal, then of course you can get the assistance of a trade union to help you, or guidance from the Ministry of Labor.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for joining us this morning and giving us that informative information based on what is currently ongoing. And we do hope that persons looking on really take away what you said and go online, look at your rights, because everything is on the webpage. You don't need to be tech savvy to do it, so it's there for you to go and see what are the conditions you are supposed to be working under, and don't be afraid to speak up. So thank you so much, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you as well. Good day to all.
Yeah. Guys, we are about to take another short break. When we come back, we do have another engaging conversation. It is something that we felt that it's timely again for it to be mentioned, so do enjoy it. And taking a break now.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 68-61662 and start building your future.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say, we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
Stroke is a leading cause of death and disability worldwide. Globally, 1 in 4 adults over the age of 25 will have a stroke in their lifetime.
Usually you would then have a conversation with the relatives, let them know exactly what's the status, what you were thinking.
We are not really ignoring them. We are acting on the patient at hand, after which we tend to communicate to them.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Up next, we do have an interview with Faith Arthur, the author of the Basanta children's book that happened last week, Tuesday. We want to thank Mr. Gary Griffith as well as Mr. Trevor Johnson for joining us this morning with those conversations. It was very timely and indeed informative. Guys, as we leave you with this video, do have a great day also. Take a look at this video. Back. In today's Youth Spotlight segment, a local educator is helping young children across Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean build stronger reading skills from an early age. Teacher, reading tutor and author Faith Arthur created the Basanta Early Childhood Reader after recognizing the growth need for accessible literacy support for beginner and struggling readers. Drawing from her hand-on experience in early childhood education, Arthur developed a resource designed to make reading engaging, confidence-building, and fun for children, while also supporting parents, teachers, and caregivers along the way. Joining me in studio is no other than Faith Arthur to share more on her book itself. Good morning, Faith.
Okay, so firstly, let me just say good morning and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Faith, tell us about yourself and what inspired that passion for writing and even education.
Okay, so my name is Faith and I am a teacher, a reading tutor, and I'm also the author of a book called the Basanta Early Childhood Reader.
Yes.
So I've always been passionate about writing. Ever since I was younger, I would tell myself, one day when you grow up, you're going to write your own books. I wasn't sure what books I would write, but surely when I got into education and working with children, I saw that need and I decided, well, why not create a book in the field that I am in?
Definitely. Now, what first made you realize there was a serious need for it in terms of that stronger literacy support for young children?
I would say when I started teaching reading classes, I marketed as beginner classes for children that are now learning how to read and also remedial classes for children that might be struggling to read. And so even though I marketed for beginner readers, I had so many children that were struggling with reading coming to me. And I thought, you know what? Why not use the methods that I was using while teaching and create a book that could help these children?
Yeah. And can you tell us why is that age range, you know, that 3 to 4 year gap so important in terms of developing reading skills?
I would say that's the age when children first come to school. They first begin preschool. However, reading does not begin at school. It begins at home. And as soon as your baby, your child could interact, you know, so reading begins by having your child identify things as letters, signs, colors. You take them to the grocery store. You don't just have them pick up their favorite snack, but you have them identify labels. Recently, and this is something I could testify on. So recently, my school, we had a field trip and we took our students on a trip. So the children were in the same bus as I was, and there was a child sitting across from me. And I observed, because it's in a teacher's nature to observe, right? I observed how engaged he was on that entire field trip. He wasn't just talking to his friends or his parents, but he was literally looking around. Mommy, look at the sign. And even if he couldn't read what was on the sign, he would spell out the words, he would look at the trucks, he would identify the colors. And whether parents realize this or not, this is early reading. So when a child comes into the classroom at preschool level, 3 to 4, they already have that comprehension development. They already are able to follow instructions. And so these things are what children build upon in terms of becoming strong reader. That language barrier, it is broken at an early age.
And you mentioned, you know, you took that experience from teaching to create this book. So how did your experience as a teacher and even reading tutor shape the content of the Basanta Early Childhood Reader book?
I would say through just classroom experience, you know, being able to see my methods work, how I would teach the children, just seeing the methods come to life. It's what truly inspired me to create this book using those very methods that would help the children.
Yeah. Now, your book was designed to feel engaging and enjoyable for children. Why was that such an important approach in terms of, you know, creating a book this way?
Okay. So I think that goes for any of us, whether we are a child or an adult. We all want to feel engaged and have fun in whatever way, shape, or form when we're learning or whatever we're doing. And so just imagine a child. Children's whole nature is to have fun, right? And I think I took that into perspective. A lot of the times when teaching children to read, we don't want them to feel stressed, because if a child feels stressed, they're not going to want to learn, they're going to shut down. And I think that is what derived the way in which I constructed this book, for children to be able to, just engage with it and have fun while learning.
Now, can you explain some of the teaching methods or techniques included in the book?
So in this book, I would have used a lot of phonics, which is absolutely the foundation for teaching reading, as well as repetition. So if we look in the contents of this book, there's a lot of repetition, because children learn best through repetition. The more that they see it, hear it, recognize it, is the more that it will stick for them. And, just in the way in which words were constructed through word blending, and the methods that I used, I would say that really helped in the development of this book.
Yeah, definitely. And can you say what makes this book different from other early childhood reading resources?
What would make this book different from other early childhood resources is just the fact that it is a tool that anyone could use. Yeah. So if you are a caregiver, a teacher, a grandmother, an auntie, I wanted to create something that anyone would be able to use. They wouldn't really have to go out and get lessons, because it's sort of like a guide to help people.
Yeah, that's so beautiful how you put it there. And you even mentioned wanting to help families, who may not have access to private lessons. Why was accessibility such a major focus for you?
While I was beginning my reading classes in the earlier days, a lot of parents would come to me and they would say, like, well, I can't really afford to bring my child to lessons right now, or whether they don't have the time to do it because they are working. Yeah. And I just wanted to create a resource that could go beyond the classroom.
That's so beautiful. And looking back at it, how rewarding has it been, hearing that feedback from parents and teachers who are already seeing the improvements in children's reading ability?
It was really encouraging for me, especially as a young person and someone that is now coming into my author journey. Yes. It was definitely an encouraging feeling, because, to hear fellow teachers say that I've been using your book in my classroom to help struggling readers, and it has helped so much, and I've seen so much improvement. Or parents would reach out to me and they would say things like, my child loved this book. He takes it everywhere and he feels as though he's playing a reading game when he's reading.
Wow. Just wow. Were you surprised by the response the book received across Trinidad and Tobago and even the wider Caribbean?
Of course. So I remember posting my video overnight, and I woke up, it was a Sunday, and I got ready to go to church. My phone was blowing up. When I put it on, I had a ton of calls, a ton of messages, but I was on my way to church, so I couldn't respond yet. So I went to church. After church, I put the phone on again. I was like, wow, I expected support, and in the messages, I was seeing people from Trinidad and Tobago. But when I looked deeper, there were also other Caribbean islands that were messaging me. How could I get this book? Where is this book available? And so I just expected love in the country, but I experienced it in the wider Caribbean.
Yeah, just beautiful. Now, how important is parental involvement when helping children develop reading confidence going forward?
I love that question, and I'm so happy that I get to come on here and highlight this. Parental involvement in a child's life is one of the most crucial parts of a child's learning journey in school. A lot of parents may say, well, I don't have the educational background to help my child, or just do certain things. However, as long as you play that role where you are really involved in the child's life, whether that's just reinforcing what they learn in school when they get home, that is going to play a major role in a child's life because you're encouraging them. And when children feel encouraged, that builds their confidence and it just pushes them to do better and, you know.
Absolutely. And for parents, you know, whose children may be struggling with reading, what advice would you give them at this time?
I would say to stay patient, consistent, and repetition. I always talk about repetition because if you know a child, children learn best through repetition. You know, so just encourage them, build their confidence because that is what's going to push them to continue to want to learn, especially reading.
Now, when we look at the book itself, were there any challenges that came from the book, or was there even a favorite part of the book that you was like, yes, when you were doing it up, you said, yeah, this is definitely going to be something, yes, for the younger ones, but even persons like yourself could look at and utilize and use for them and be a part of that experience altogether. How was that process? Can you talk us through it?
I would say, yeah, there were difficulties in creating the book. It's just the ideas coming together and me wanting to build something intentional that would last and be able to make an impact for children, not just for children, but the adults that might be using this resource to teach their children. I would say one of my favorite parts in this book is the silent magic E page. Right? The silent magic E rule. I love teaching the silent magic E rule. And
can you show the viewers again, just so, yes, because guys, it's definitely something you don't want to miss out when you have this book. Just by looking at it, you already can tell the engagement that's going to happen.
So I love this page in particular. When this idea came to me, it was just teaching children how easy it is to be able to recognize a rule like this. I know when I was teaching my reading classes, a lot of children, they didn't know this and they didn't know how to break it down. And so I used this method in class and it worked wonders with the children. And so I was like, yeah, definitely this is gonna go in the book.
I love it. Even hearing you express, you know, that passion for children, that passion for wanting to help, you know, just make that experience for reading a better one is truly commendable. It is really, as a young person as well, looking at you, you can see other persons looking at you and saying, yeah, Mom, Dad, I don't mind being like this woman one day, you know, being able to be a part of this, helping change things for other youths. Now, what are your hopes for the future? For, you know, the Basanta Early Childhood Reader and for literacy development in the region?
My hopes for the future is basically for more parents to take the initiative of early reading. You see, when you work with children that are older, let's say 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds that are struggling at that level still with reading, you come to a realization that a foundation somewhere along the way was not met. And that took the child throughout all these classes without being assessed properly. And so when children begin early reading, they don't have this problem. I think when children struggle with reading, they're going to struggle academically throughout their school journey. And I think my plan for this book is for it to become a demand in schools, a demand throughout schools in the Caribbean in general, a demand for institutions and stuff to be able to pick up this book because it is a step-by-step guide on teaching children how to read.
Definitely. Now, where can persons get this book if, you know, they're interested, they love what they're seeing so far, and they love how expressive you are and passionate about it. So it's really encouraging to want to support, and maybe they might know someone who this book can really help. Where can we get your book?
Okay, so this book can be purchased on Amazon. However, if you are not purchasing it on Amazon, you can purchase it through me by contacting 1-868-497-0803.
Thank you. So can you say that number again for persons looking on?
You can contact me at 1-868-497-0803 to purchase it, or you can purchase on Amazon.
Wow. And how would you say social media has helped push this book to go forth?
It has been the biggest help for me. I don't know if the book would have went the direction it would have went without social media. Right. Social media is really, really important for businesses these days. Yeah. I think if you are not on social media and you have a business, that your business will take a different turn. Right. Social media is really a benefit when it comes to running your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And now for that child who, they want to be a part of this experience in terms of even just starting up to better themselves to read, what advice would you, or how would you speak to them at this time?
I would say to don't be so hard on yourself. Reading is a journey. It is not something that you're going to develop overnight. And I think you would tell any child that practice makes perfect. We've all heard that as a child. And if they really have that support system at home, they're going to practice. They're going to want to become better, so yeah.
Absolutely. And lastly, just tell us again where we can get your book and that contact number.
So you can purchase my book on Amazon, or you can purchase directly through me at 1-868-497-0803.
Thank you so much, Faith, for coming on this morning and sharing your book with us. It truly is an honor to be a part of this experience, and it is a journey that, as you said, you're starting this author journey, and I can't wait to see how much more you blossom into it and, really impact the educational literacy system where children feel like learning is fun again, and it's not too much of a task or even a struggle. And so no one should be saying, oh my gosh, no, not this again. They should now have that excitement, that thrill to go towards reading or learning in general. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing that with us to be a part of the experience with you.
And thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure being on here this morning.
Absolutely. Guys, as we wrap up today's show, we hope that everyone that came on, you were able to take something from them. You take away something that can impact your life moving forward. So don't just think about what may happen in the past, but look at how you can make that change and that difference today. As I always say, stay informed, stay safe, stay positive. Up next, we do have Sean Michael Small at 8 with Talking Points, so you'd want to come back for that. And I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye.
WESN